So it's great to be here today. What you mentioned, a head teacher, three treasures Zen community. We're in South Pasadena, and what you and I do a little swapping. He's helping my students with sewing neuroxes, which are these. Thank God I didn't have to sew this one because I would have been in deep trouble. And well, let me just jump in because I have some stuff I want to cover, which is basically there's a lot of things going on in this country, a lot, and dealing with election, administration, dealing with fires, all this stuff, and people are dealing with health and illness and all the things in life that we deal with that come our way. A lot of the questions, times we can say, well, wait a second, I've got this Buddhist practice, and isn't this supposed to protect me from all of this? Or you can have that attitude. This koan addresses this in a way, but it's a way to kind of dive into the subject of how we use our practice and what we use it for. So here is the koan. It's Yunjun Wushan stayed in Longmen. Okay, so Longmen Temple, let me just call him Yunjun. He's a monk, and monks would travel around and go to different temples. That's a big part of what they did. They were the original Dharma monks. And this temple where he was staying was called Longmen Men Dragon Gate. Okay, Dragon Gate. Dragon symbolizing in Chinese mythology strength, wisdom, prosperity, symbol of the emperor, China itself. So that's where he's staying. And it's known, it's a great temple, very auspicious, powerful. And here's what happened. One day, a monk was bitten in the leg by a snake. Another monk asked, this is Longmen Temple. How is it that he was bitten by a snake? In response, Yunju, the guy who was visiting, promptly displayed the sign of a great man. When somebody else heard about this later, he said, there is a monk in Longmen. Thanks to him, the Dharma on the Eastern Mountain has not been lost. So these koans are stories. I like to break them down because they can sound like, what is she talking about? So I'm going to break it down, but it has like an incredible teaching in it. And the main teaching is from this monk going, wait, this is Longmen Temple. How is it that he was bitten by a snake? How could this happen here? This is the temple called Dragon Gate, strength, wisdom, prosperity, enlightenment. What's a snake? Low, unreliable, dangerous. How can somebody in Longmen, protected by powerful dragons, be bit by a snake? Okay, so that's his question. And how did this visiting monk respond? He displayed the sign of a great man. That means he literally exhibited the signs of Buddha, but basically I'll get into what he said. And then he was praised for this. So thanks to him responding as the Buddha in this moment, the authentic Dharma can be preserved. Okay, so how do we read this? What Foyan, this monk, was asking for is rationalization. How can this happen here? So we can kind of think this thing like, well, the Buddhist practice will protect me from calamities. Or if things happen, I won't be disturbed by them. Some people have said to me, and students have come to me and said, this is going on and that is going on, and it's rocking me, and I'm very distracted. And I'm like, well, you're dealing through all of this. Of course you're distracted. It's totally fine that you're distracted. Delusionment is enlightenment. Enlightenment is delusion. There's actually no difference. So we just deal with what we're facing head on. So what is the visiting monk that displayed, manifested the Buddha in that moment? What did he do? He basically doesn't get carried away by the rationalizations. We know this from our teaching that suffering, number one, life is suffering is what the Buddha said. So we're confronting this, we're confronting impermanence, which we know as well, which is the constant change we're dealing with. Now, the people who lost their house in the fire are obviously dealing with a massive change. I had a house, now I don't have a house. So basically, he's not getting carried away. The suffering is a part of life. It's challenging, but it leaves open what's possible. It doesn't actually say he didn't have the perfect comeback here. He just displayed, he manifested the form of Buddha. Maybe he said, did anybody call this man's family and let them know that this monk was bit by a snake? Maybe it's like, hey, let's take him to the ER. So what we're doing is, when we sit and say, like, well, how does this happen here? Well, wait, is it my practice supposed to protect me from feeling the way I do or feeling anxious about the election? And again, if people are psyched about the election, that is fine. I hold no judgments for and against. I'm just saying that whatever it is we're dealing with, we're confronting them head on. And if it's overwhelm, if it's anxiety, that's just part of what we're dealing with. That's just, we're sitting, and that's part of it. So we don't have to worry about that. So basically what we're facing is, we could call it a kind of storm, right? A storm, in a way, hit this temple when this monk was bit by a snake. A storm blew over Los Angeles area. The monk is letting the storm fill the space without resistance. Maybe he feels the pain in his leg. I'm a mom, so I have a kid, and I swear she'll bump her elbow, and I'll be like, yeah. So and that can happen with us, with friends, we're connected to everybody. So when you're in a place of connection, you may be feeling that as well. So could that be the sign of what he means by the great man? You're free to choose. You're free to choose. I have one friend, she's a very close friend, a chiropractor. She lives in Altadena. It's her husband's home for generations. And I don't think she has insurance, to be honest. So I'll be, starting a GoFundMe page for her. But we're dealing with this all the time. It doesn't, a fire sort of brings it all up. But in our lives, we're constantly dealing with, the moments where we're like, well, why is this happening now? When my older brother, actually, 50 years old, in his 50s, and when was it? A year and a half ago, he died of stage 4 lung cancer. He didn't smoke, ran marathons, barely drank, and would mock my sister for not eating vegetables, and got stage 4 lung cancer. I still can't wrap my head around this. So it's really kind of, this koan is really helpful because it really just helps you look at what do we do in this situation? Instead of looking for that rationalization, confront it as one of the challenges along the way that we deal with in practice. And practice equips us to deal with challenges. And speaking of equipping you to deal with challenges, I want to talk about steps to cultivate compassion. And it's actually a whole technique that I learned called grace, which is, it has 5 elements to it. And it's all about when you're in a situation dealing with yourself or others, how do you cultivate compassion? Because that's exactly what might need to happen, okay? And this is, again, this is dealing with your mom's being a pain in the ass and like making your entire family miserable at Thanksgiving or any holiday, and you're just trying to like not bite your mom's head off and be compassionate. It's that simple. It's everyday life you can use this. So it's like these great, it's you can use it at work. So let me talk about this of what it is. Basically, what I love about it is I've always like been like compassion and Buddhism. We hear about it all the time. We hear about Kuan Yin. We hear about, but practically speaking, like, does compassion be like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm just going to be like a nice person? Like, I don't know. But anyway, this really gets into it. And the whole philosophy behind this is it's grace, G, gathering attention, focus, grounding, balance. R, we're calling intention, the resource of motivation. A, attuning to self and other. C, considering what will serve. And E, ethical enactment, then ending. So it's a whole process. It's kind of cool. And I know I'm like throwing this at you today. So just hear what take what you can from it, and you can ask me questions. But essentially the whole, and I was doing this with my group because I'm like, yeah, we kind of need this right now. Compassion is not a luxury. It's actually a necessity for our well-being, resilience, and survival. So it actually allows us to slow down, be more mindful and aware in our process of interacting with others. You can use it in everyday interactions, and it allows you to cultivate more compassion in your own life. So my husband and I have this joke where it's like he'll say he's dealing with something, and I'll be like, you want me to give you a fix for that? And he's like, yeah, honey, that's exactly what I want. So a lot of times when people come to you and they're like, they're actually not looking for a fix. They're actually just looking for some space. But anyway, gathering attention, focus, grounding, and balance. I think we spent about 20 minutes on this with my group. What do you do to make yourself grounded? And I think I've been doing things. Now, again, Zazen is very grounding. The breathing that we do in Zazen, whether it's taking 5 minutes and you do Zazen. But there are other things you can do. I think I mentioned this last time I was here, that I was doing somatic therapy, which is connecting the body and dealing with any emotion that you're dealing directly in the body. So for example, right when we were dealing with Tuesday, I had my session and, dealing with Sangha and trying to help everybody out. My somatic therapist was like, okay, well, identify a part of your body that actually feels okay. And I was like, I can't find a single part of my body that feels not relaxed. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, okay, my toes. So I started wiggling my toes and the tops of my feet. So basically and that's actually very grounding. If you need a little grounding, you just feel your feet under you. You wiggle your toes. Somebody in my group was saying this is very helpful. I was seeing him do this. I'm like, what is he doing? That's very grounding. Taking a deep breath. And you're just bringing attention, breath, neutral part of the body. Bring your attention to a phrase or object. So I can be like looking at colors, laptop, whatever it is around the room. So that's do you guys have any techniques you use when you want to be grounded in your body? Is there anything you do in particular? And it can be anything.
I heard something a couple of weeks ago, and it really helped me, because I'm usually pretty spaced out and all over the place, and I don't listen very well. Somebody said, listen with your eyes and speak with your ears. So when I'm in a situation with a person, and it's like, am I really going to be there? And then also I find I'm looking at the person while they're speaking and not doing this, whatever it is my mind wants to do. And that to me sounds like getting grounded in an interaction.
Yeah. It sounds totally, yeah. Anybody else just have anything random that they do?
I think it's exercise called the five senses, so I don't think like working with patients and these things that we can from. It's all over each sense. Sometimes I sometimes I just do one, or
The taste part, is that when you get to have something yummy like ice cream?
I think you're actually starting my mouth through my mouth and
Okay.
they say, okay, please something else. It's like a thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, and there's so many koans, and the practice is so much connected to the senses. It's one of the reasons why actually I was talking to, David and I were talking about Sesshin, the longer sits, which is like a week. By the time you're done, they could give me a piece of cardboard to eat, and I'd be like, this is so delicious. The food is far better than cardboard, by the way, but it's amazing. So second is recall your intention, the resources of motivation. What is it? To be of service to others, to open your heart to the world. And all of that helps with the motivation keeps you on track, morally grounded, connected to your values. It's actually very helpful in dealing with people too, because if you're recalling your intention, so let's say you're at a Thanksgiving and the family stuff is going a little crazy. I mean, I'm telling you basically about my family because we have so much drama. My sister,
Every family.
yeah, exactly. My sister will be going this way and that way, and then the intention will be like, we're all together as a family. And if I recall that, I'll actually it'll help me. And again, this is not to create perfect interactions with people. This is more of just like, oh, it brings awareness here. Like, oh, this is what my intention is, to be together and to enjoy each other and appreciate this time together. Whatever it is, that can help a lot. On attune by checking in with yourself, then whoever you're interacting with. First, notice what's going on in your own mind and body, then sense into experience of whom you are with. Sense into what the other person is saying. This sounds like what you were talking about too, David, the attune. Checking in with yourself, then who you're interacting with. Sense without judgment. Open a space for which you are present, for whatever may arise in yourself and the other person. How do you notice and acknowledge the other person? See with your ears, hear with your eyes, what you were saying. How does the other person notice and acknowledge you? Notice the mutual exchange. Puts you right back in the moment. And that's what so much of our practice is about that. It's about quieting the noise, recognizing the monkey mind, setting the monkey mind aside when we sit. So all of this is actually your zazen off the cushion and in action. Nothing different than what you do in your zazen, right? When we sit and we're checking in with our mudra and our thumbs, when we sit. We're setting, maybe we're checking in with our body. I'm noticing my sciatica is like all over the place. Whatever it is, that's what we're doing and grounding ourselves. C, consider what will serve. Being truly present for the other and letting insights arise. They may fall outside of a predictable category. Don't jump to conclusions too quickly. As you encounter what the other person unfolds, notice what the other person might be offering in the moment. What are you sensing, seeing, learning? Ask yourself, what will really serve here? Drawing your expertise, knowledge, and experience. But be open. So again, our interactions with people can actually be very unpredictable.
You know, what helps me, maybe it's just a boy a little bit, when I know I'm going to have something difficult, I had a difficult discussion coming up yesterday, is thinking about it in advance, planning, you know, well, starting with sort of empathizing with how this person is going to see this information that's going to be delivered. And if I was in that person's, feeling that person's reaction, how would I take the information? Then working with that sort of in a not that it's going to be what actually happens, because what actually happens is what actually happens. But it's like, I find that we can kind of navigate it better if we kind of think about it consciously, compassionately beforehand.
Yeah.
Right? Anticipate this other being that we're going to interact with.
Right. Well, you can also do, it sounds like you're almost doing this whole thing is the pre-meeting,
Yeah.
you know, in a way where you're tuning into the other, you're tuning in and considering what will serve, like, you know, they have, you know, they've hired you to act as their attorney, but yet these are their goals and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's very helpful. I mean, obviously you don't have to be like, what did Becca say? Grace, G-R-A. But I mean, you're doing it intuitively, and a lot of this is, again, it's a practice of dropping away self and other, because that's really what our practice is about. Now, dropping away self and other doesn't mean that I am going to drive home in Alex's car. I know I have a car, and I know it's my car, and he's got his car, but in a sense of how we live, how we engage, it can just really help us. And then we have moments when we're in here. So then there's so many tools you can use. Yeah.
I took a guy surfing the other day, and it was the first time I've been surfing in 2 years, picking my broken back. I did okay, so that's it. But I didn't tell them what they needed to know, because I was thinking, usually it's a guy and a girl, mansplaining. Let me tell you everything I know. And I didn't want to do that, even though it's a guy. I didn't want to get into that, you know, lecturing thing. And so he didn't have a very good time. There were things I could have told him. But the other thing would have been, you know, what do you know about surfing? I couldn't, I thought about it afterwards, you know, like, why didn't I just ask, what do you know, what do you want to know, what do you need to know? I can go that far with you, and then I don't have to, it just, you know, I could see where that person is at, what I could do to help them without having to beat them over. I mean, I've seen couples file for divorce on a ski slope because the guy was trying to tell the girl how to ski, and she was weeping, and it was like the whole mansplaining, you know. And that compassion thing sounds like, you know, how do you get around that?
Yeah, and also, I mean, I remember, maybe it was, let me check the time, because I can tell I'm not. Oh, okay, so I'm still good, I'm still good. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the way you say it. I remember I had gone to a week-long retreat and then went down to Nashville to help my friend wanted me to run like a Zen workshop for the day. So I had gone to my retreat and I was very much in a place of silence. That's all you need is silence. Because that's where I was, right? And then I go and they're brand new people. They never meditated before. They literally show up and I was like, well, I'm just going to let them be in silence for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. I think I probably wanted them to sit for 20 minutes. And my friend was like, no, you have to actually talk to them. Like, I feel you're in silence. So it was like we ended up talking and it was all fine. So that's like checking in to where the other person is. And again, this is helpful at work too. I mean, I'm a writer, I run, writers' rooms and everything, and I have a staff of people I work with. I have to know where the person is before I slam them with all the notes I'm going to give them. So that becomes very helpful in that way. engage and act ethically. That's how you end the interaction. Engage and enact principled compassion. I mean, this is kind of just like end it. I don't think you're like, okay, I'm done with my compassion exercise with you. It's more of closure for yourself, where you're co-creating a dynamic, morally grounded situation characterized by mutuality, trust, and consistent with your values and ethics. This is actually more describing what principled compassion is. These aspirations may not always be realized because they're deep-rooted conflicts in goals and values, but it's about approaching them with a sense of, from a place of stability and discernment. So when we end it, we mark the end of the interaction with this person, release, let go, breathe out. Maybe you think about what the next step is. And I don't really have particular advice on that step. I think that happens very organically. Like, it could be like, great, well, look, if anything else comes up, I'm here, you can talk to me. Like, you got this. It can be whatever it is you say, or, let me know if you blah, 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 blah. To yourself, it's like, okay, I'm ready to do whatever it is I need to do. But I checked in with myself and we're good, I clear, deep breath, let go. So it's a whole thing, and you can do it anytime, wherever you are, just take the moment to do it. It's really like a quick process unless it's a long conversation. Any other just general, we can actually talk about anything at this point, because this is what I wanted to talk about. But if you have any questions about practice, since I'm here, or how your practice is going, or anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to do that.
Well, staying with your grace, it's hard for me to remember all those things when I'm trying to actually with somebody, but it seems like being present, paying attention, and taking appropriate action or communication is what this is really all about. Again, letting go of ourselves, being present with the other person and paying attention to what they're saying to you, and with their eyes, with their breathing, with all of that. That's sort of, I think, the simplified
that's totally
version.
And also doing it, remember, you can do it with yourself.
Yeah.
Yourself is the person that you may need to do it with. It may be like, let's say you're having a moment of overwhelm and you're like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Well, you can check in and be like, what do you think's going on? Take a breath, take a moment, check in, let go. Just because a lot of the times we can get in practice like, we can do like a spiritual bypass in meditation where it's like, no, I'm going to push that away. No, I'll just meditate again and not feel anything. But really, if you take a moment to acknowledge it, bring awareness to it, it's far easier to let it go, in my opinion. So, any emotion, I had one question when I was at Yokoji where the person was saying, I don't know what to do, like, I have a lot of resentment. And like, what does Zen say about that? And I'm like, it's the Dharma of resentment. That's your practice right there. Maybe there's an unspoken communication, but that's what you're practicing with. So whatever it is we're practicing with, isn't it interesting how we tend not to have to practice with joy? Oh my God, I have so much joy, what do I do? But maybe sometimes people can be like, I have joy, what's wrong? Let me create drama because I have joy. So they don't actually allow the joy to just sink in and feel that. because they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just talking, but anyway. Yes.
How do we balance compassion with boundaries in a process where the compassion is being taken advantage of, and we're going through the process of, okay, opening my heart, oh, it's being taken advantage of again. At what point do we see, like, is there a line? What do we do in our own practice?
Yeah, I mean, compassion is not being a doormat, because that's not serving you. That means if you're, and again, this isn't a blame thing, if you're in a situation, sometimes you need, boundaries are very important, and that's being compassionate towards yourself. So that part cannot be dropped out. And it's not going to really serve if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be compassionate towards Mark, but like I'm just going to do whatever he wants. That's not really compassionate. That's not a balanced interaction at all. So I would say you almost need to do this, if you can do this check-in with yourself first, really set your intention. What's your intention about your relationship with this person? Is it a friendship? How do you want it to be? If it's a balanced friendship, some boundaries are going to come up, right? So again, I mean, that's something to work with, and Zen doesn't have all the answers for it, and a lot of times you can talk to a therapist who can really help with specific things to say. But yeah, I mean, compassion sometimes is confused with people being passive in situations, and I do not see it that way. I see it as very active. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Reactivity.
Yes.
The grace kind of, yeah, that's a good thing to follow, but the stupid thing that you didn't want to say that in that way.
Oh.
So yeah, just like relationships especially, you know, you've already blurted out something on reflection, what you shouldn't have said.
Right.
So how do you conquer that thing of that?
Well, first of all, I feel like you're having, if you realize you said, okay, I'll give you a perfect example of how this all, because there was a moment, I have all sorts of reactivity, but I'll give you a specific moment where it was somebody else to me, but it was a great moment because she dealt with it in a beautiful way. So, my mom passed away 4 months ago, and my dad he has a new girlfriend. And I was like, now everybody's like, oh wait, you know, men, they can't be alone, blah, blah, blah. I'm not speaking to men here, so. But I was like, well, but adult children sometimes have a hard time with it. So I was basically like trying to figure this one out, let's say this. Not unhappy for my dad or mad at him, but trying to figure it out. So I just told my cousin about it, I'm very close with, and her immediate reaction was, that's wonderful. And I was kind of like, you know, I'm kind of struggling with this. Anyway, she called back like 2 days later, and she just said, hey, listen, I know the first thing I blurted out was, that's wonderful, but when I thought about it, and I thought about how you might be feeling, I realized that maybe you're not feeling that way. And like, that was beautiful. Like, for me, that was perfect. I have no problem with the fact that she just owned that moment of reactivity. She had taken that breath, maybe she had an insight around it, and then just came back and said, look, I'm sorry I said that. That might have not been the right thing to say. Frankly, I think in many relationships, this happens on a daily basis. Not speaking from personal experience. I don't know if that helps. But again, that's your practice. That's the awareness that comes in that can help. So don't be shy about coming back and being like, hey, my bad. Now, if the person insists on punishing you for it, that's another thing. Because, you know, both parties have to be able to let stuff go, in my opinion.
Well, for me, what practices allow me to do is to have that split second before where I can actually decide, am I going to let this person have it? Or am I going to just chill about this? You know, like something happens, somebody says something, and I'm not talking about law practice, just in general. Sometimes I'm really angry, but I get that split second where I decide, am I going to like release that, or I'm simply going to just go on and talk about something else. I'm in control. How do I want to handle it?
Sure.
Which I think is a beautiful part of practice.
Yeah, no, you can definitely get that. There are times where it can come out reactive, that's okay, but oftentimes you get a little more depth of the whole aspect of choice. One of my students calls the practice the restoration of choice. Mm-hmm. Because we live very much reactively in the world, and there's a lot to react to. Let's face it, there's a lot going on. So how do we do that? Sometimes it's easier than others. Yes.
Since we're talking about calamity, one can't really predict calamity, whether it's fires or droughts or what have you. So how do you prepare for calamity?
I mean, preparing, look, there's like your emergency kit or figuring out where you're going to stay, cleaning all the brush, in my case, getting the brush cleared on my property, that's preparing. Worrying is a different story. Somebody said worrying is like sitting in a rocking chair and rocking back and forth but never moving anywhere. So I would recommend being where you are, and to prepare for the next calamity just robs you of your experience of where you are. And you know what? I had a direct experience of this with my daughter because she just left for college. She's on the East Coast, and she came back for a month. And I had this moment where I'm like, she's only here for a month, and then she's going to be gone. She's only here for a month, and I'm only child. I'm very attached to her. But then I had to stop and just say, oh, and I have a lot of work. And I'm like, and I have a lot of work. I was like, okay, here's your options. You can sit and like stress about the fact that she's leaving in 2 weeks, or you can be like, I'm going to do as little work as possible this week and just spend time with her and just spend every full moment. And then next week, my ass will be kicked, and then I'll feel sorry for myself. And I was like, that is what I chose. So again, that restoration of choice. And this is not like, and then Becca told us how to conquer every negative emotion. No, it's working with wherever, like your entry point, wherever you are. But that's a great question, because I think a lot of people think about that. Yes.
Let me narrow down my thoughts about compassion and Buddhism.
Yeah.
I think in my own practice, I'm getting to the point of my compassion is seeing the Buddhas within every individual. And then part of the compassion is opening my heart to trust that that is true and giving the opportunities for that to express itself. And my challenge in my practice is that when it doesn't happen, what do I do as a practitioner, and how do I deal with the emotions and the reactions of that disappointment?
Okay, so here's what I'm sensing from what you're telling me is seeing the Buddha in everyone else is my husband is a pain in the ass. That's pain in the ass Buddha. So it isn't, I'm very blunt, as you can tell. And my husband, is this being recorded? That's the Buddha. I'm being very reactive. That's also the Buddha. The Buddha isn't, this person is going to act perfectly towards me and do exactly what I want. We're confronting the Buddha at every moment. And that's part of the challenge. So can you be compassionate towards yourself and others when pain in the ass is showing up? And just be like, now again, this is not to say you're the pain in the ass Buddha, whatever you want, da, 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 da. I mean, seeing the bigger picture, right? Obviously, I know my husband loves me very much. He does a lot of things for both of us. We're still, my commitments to my relationship, all of that is within the bigger context, but at times he can be a pain in the ass, I can be a pain in the ass, but that's still Buddha. And me reacting badly to a situation, still Buddha. We're never apart from Buddha. So this practice isn't about fixing, changing. In the process, things may very well shift and change, but it's not set out. It's you are already the Buddha. I and all sentient beings simultaneously attain the way. That's what the Buddha said when he was enlightened. Not I and all beings simultaneously attain the way as long as Becca's husband isn't a pain in the ass. So I don't know if that helps, but try that on.
It seems to me what is called for is right action, which is action in alignment with reality. It is neither negative nor positive.
Right.
It's just what is needed.
Sure. What is needed? What is needed, And then again, it's situation based. So sometimes what is needed is, do you want me to order dinner tonight? Or sometimes what is needed is, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry you have so much work. Sometimes what is needed is like, hey, I'm here if you want to talk about it. Or, being of service, totally. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. I know I'm very blunt about people being, yes, of course, we would never say that.
Yeah, I'm having trouble manifesting the great Buddha with forgiveness. I heard recently, it's okay to forgive people if the person is showing in themselves signs of what they were, the slight that they come to me. Because they're reflective and they're growing. But if they're just going to continue being that dick, there's no point in me forgiving. But then, I know forgive and forget. I don't want to go there. But then I have to carry the burden of that resentment. And I'm just kind of in the middle of that right now with my family. Most of us have slighted one another in some way or another. I try not to, and probably somebody's going to point out how I did, but I feel like I've been very much slighted by my family. And I don't see them changing. And here I am making out this big fat will. Talk to them. I'll give it to the American Media College.
I was going to say, how about Sensei here?
Huh?
It was a terrible joke.
No, Actually, I owe it to the American Indians and the American Media College because they're the ones that's why this white boy here on the West Coast is so successful because they so much. But I don't want to carry this anger when the family doesn't want to show any growth. They don't know growth. Growth isn't a thing for them. Growth and recognition of how badly they're hurting. So I don't know.
No, it's a lot. And
I can't be the Buddha. I don't know how I can be the Buddha.
Well, even in the state of like you are confused or conflicted Buddha, that's still the Buddha. Right? And you're doing, at times we have situations where we don't have an immediate solution to it. That's a kind of situation with your family that I feel like is best probably deal with in therapy. Versus, I don't know if Zen has the perfect answer, but even in conflict, even in turmoil, even with can I forgive, can I forget, all of that conversation, still Buddha. Just another aspect of the vast ocean, another wave in a vast ocean. So there's space for it. And you get to decide how you want to be around, these people. It's not easy. I mean, family relationships are not easy. Relationships aren't easy. Yeah, so.
I just kind of have to remember that impermanence is my friend, and it's always going to be difficult. Just going to have to embrace it.
Yeah, things will constantly change and your feelings will change. Thank you for joining us. It was great to meet you both. Oh yeah, no problem. Okay.
Thank you.
But yeah, no worries. Oh yeah, it's 11:15. I guess 4 hours.
Yeah, this is a good time to start.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right.